Hello, hello.
You hear me?
Hello, yes, I can. We are live on YouTube.
Okay.
So thanks to everybody watching us on YouTube. We're going to get started in about 4 minutes here. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you want to share your screen now, we can get that first slide up. And then I'll probably let people in around 9:59 and then start talking at 10.
Sounds good.
I wasn't sure if that was your full title listed there. That's what it
Yeah,
said.
that
Okay.
that, that works.
Okay.
Multiple hats. Well,
Yeah.
that's
Okay, I'm gonna let everybody start joining. Okay, looks like we got a few people join in. Thanks for joining early, everybody. We're gonna get started in just a minute here. Okay, good morning, everybody, or afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for joining today's KETIV Virtual Academy session. Today we have Greston Donovan joining us today. He's on the KETIV Customer Success Operations team, and he's going to be talking about improving the engineering role with connected data. We're so happy that you're here. We hope you're enjoying the learning experience. That is KETIV Virtual Academy. I see a lot of familiar faces on here, so thanks for joining. If this is your first session, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. I did want to ask a question to everybody here today. On the next slide here, I have a few pictures of emails that you received to learn about what today's topic was going to be. And I'm just curious to know how you found out about what today's topic was and what made you want to join. Did you see this email from KETIV on the left? Did you see this email from Zoom on the right? Did you see a social media post? Did you go on the KETIV website? How did you find out about today's session? We're just trying to be a bit more efficient with how we communicate with all of you. And if you have any feedback about this, the emails you've received, or topics you want to see covered, anything about KVA, you will receive or you will see a pop-up to a poll after the session. So fill that out. It helps us create a better experience for you. So thanks for joining, everybody, and I'll let Greston take it away.
All right, thank you, Christina. So, yeah, I'm gonna run through a few things here. I'm gonna introduce myself here in a second, but we're gonna talk a little bit about KETIV's evolution as a company, where DataBridge essentially has fit into that process. Talk about some of the common business problems that the DataBridge could go ahead and solve for you. We're also going to talk about digital maturity and the importance that it is with DataBridge. They're pretty much tied hand in hand there. And then also talk about kind of the business process assessments that they do, which we can help determine where you are in the digital maturity matrix, and then how KETIV DataBridge could help your organization. So a little bit about me. I'm sure some of these names on the board that I'm seeing look pretty familiar, but I've been at KETIV now for a little over 9 years. And I think I've probably held every role that we have at this company. I started in customer support, helping really getting the support team off the ground. I worked for a few years in delivery and also design automation projects. So doing workflow configurations, getting on site with customers, doing trainings and mentorings and implementations for pretty much all of Autodesk Suite. And then the last few years, I've found myself inside of our business operations department, really helping streamline our internal processes, workflows, getting some of our own internal software connected together and linked up. Before that, I spent about 5 to 6 years as a mechanical design engineer in the oil and gas industry, and then also primarily in industrial manufacturing, and you're talking structural steel, big machines, in those kind of environments. A little fun fact, I've been using Inventor, I think now, or at least AutoCAD at least, since 2004. I took a design engineering class in high school, and that I got hooked. So I pretty much have been involved in like Autodesk or engineering, honestly, since I was 15 in a sophomore high school class. It's been pretty fun. So to get this kicked off, this is going to be a bit of a fun conversation here. And I want to talk about KETIV's evolution, especially since I've been here. KETIV's been around now for I think about 40 years. And it's been primarily focused on design and engineering. Right. So a lot of the things that, even when I got put on board was we do Inventor, AutoCAD, we're kind of in the Autodesk sphere. And we're really focusing on doing like software configurations, we're getting things implemented, doing trainings around design and engineering, fixing engineering processes. And as we got better and better and better in these areas, we started listening more to what engineering and these companies are talking about. We realized that there's ways that we could expand our business to also better support the businesses that we're partnering with. One of those areas that popped up quite frequently was actually around simulation. And this was driven largely by conversations around, customers have unique requests, market demands are changing constantly. We're being pressed to have faster time to market with the same quality products that the customers are expecting it to. We can't really use our customer base as guinea pigs at the end of the day. And another area is honestly like product development is expensive. We've got a few customers that I've worked with where, the only way they can test is essentially by doing crashing it. We've worked with a couple manufacturers in the Northwest where they essentially just dump planes into a river. It's expensive. So having simulation and being able to support simulation was a really key differentiator for us. Another area that we started noticing was on the quoting side. When I was working in engineering, we're frequently being pulled in to, validate quotes from customers. Sales is getting you involved to do general arrangements, layout drawings, working with the sales team to figure out how is this thing going to work. And that pulls away from engineering time. Like I can't do both, right? I can't be designing a product, running through simulations, and trying to help out the sales team. So we noticed that there's a bit of a gap on a CPQ system. And we've been partnering with another software solution to help out doing like streamlining and honestly automating that sales process. There's some pretty cool tools out there where you can have these complex product designs, have those tied into like dynamic pricing models, and still then start feeding that information downstream to design and engineering and making sure it works. So what you're trying to do is streamline the upfront sales process and make sure that you're giving the customer updated, correct, dynamic pricing information depending on whatever it is they might need, while still satisfying the need of being able to meet those customer requirements, making sure that you can get the fabrication documentation out and actually build the product. The next area in all this was, I mean, this has been KETIV's bread and butter for a long time. PDM, Vault is a huge thing, but also PLM. You need to be able to track how this product is moving all the way through that life cycle, from the point of sales has got their hands on it and you're building these quotes, goes down to engineering. I want to see where it is in the engineering process, make sure I'm ready to go for production, and that I'm actually validating all the designs that are coming through. PLM helps you move through that entire process. And then with each of these areas, you're going to have data associated to it. And that's where PDM would come into play. The other area that I feel like frequently kind of falls out of the discussion, but I've been involved a lot more recently on this, is CRM and ERP. Almost every organization out there has some kind of a CRM package. And then every organization, especially for engineering, has an ERP package. CRM is typically more of a customer-facing thing where you'd want to be interfacing with customers, notes, activities, being able to track emails, call logs, making sure that you're really pulling in all of that customer data so I can use it for, targeted selling and other things like that. On the ERP side is typically more of your financial information. So this is going to be where you probably send your bill of materials off to out of design and engineering. Put your documentation if you're going to be doing any outsourcing or offsite cutting of material. I mean, honestly, ERP will even tie later on into, say, production, right? So if you have some machining that needs to be in-house, or you want to do work orders or create some like transmittal packages, like a lot of those are being derived from an ERP. Now, the thing with CRM and ERP is they're not typically underneath an engineering package umbrella, right? Like those are the CRM and ERP packages are extremely specific, and there's a lot of them out there. So what ends up happening is, when you're getting into this environment, like KETIV, we're able to support CPQ, we can support design engineering, we're getting into simulation. Those are all areas in our wheelhouse. But now we're getting like CRM and ERP, you've got a PLM. And what typically happens is when an organization is trying to pull all this stuff together, they really look for best-in-class solutions. Like I was saying, you're not going to typically find the best-in-class solution for each of these individual steps all underneath one umbrella. So you get silos of information. You're going to have a CRM package. You're going to be trying to pull information out of that and sending it over to CPQ, but that's going to be a different software. And there's nothing that really brings those things together. And that's where KETIV Data Bridge comes in. So we notice that we've got all of these different buckets, but there's no real solution to how we pull those together. And so we worked pretty diligently on coming up with some kind of solution that would allow us to link the entire business process together. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, what KETIV Data Bridge is, and kind of the areas that we can find that it helps the most. So I really like the phrase environment bonding. It is an integration platform at the highest level, but what we're really trying to do with this is pull everything together. And it's specifically designed for the engineering and manufacturing industry. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it. Like talking about, complex data threads, workflows, logic controls, kind of like automation for your data at a really high level. You're able to pull all of these business applications together. And there's a whole So a whole list of pre-built connectors you can use, but also on top of that, because it's built off of like REST API and pretty standard programming language, you can generate custom application connectors for pretty much anything. Uh, I've worked with a few companies that actually have house-built CPQ systems or house-built CRM, or like, hey, we've got this tool that we use pretty frequently. We can connect into those. It gives us a really unique advantage of paring back all that data and making sure you can pull that into whatever application you want to downstream just by using these connectors. Uh, Almost as important as being able to connect things is seeing what's happening. So there's some cool tools inside of this. We're able to monitor all the data that's being going through. There's these things called transaction models and transaction logs that'll be inside of this tool. So you can have, say, like error reporting. You can track the data that's being flown downstream. You can see how often people are using it, and you can start leveraging this more as like a leadership facing tool, as opposed to just inside of the engineering group. And we have a little reward here thing down at the bottom left. I mean, we're typically seeing about 140% production boost, right? Because you're eliminating a lot of those manual processes and more focusing on doing approvals and really pushing that information downstream. I'm going to talk about some common business problems that I've just personally seen. This is stuff that I would run into quite frequently when I was on industry, and even in my time as like, technical sales and pre-sales when I was traveling around a lot. These are the conversations you have. Manual communication is huge. Emails, phone calls, Teams messages, somebody drops off a post-it note at your desk, or the shop walks up to give you red lines. Manual communication happens all the time. Another huge area is quote responsiveness. Sales might be out there, you might be a tech sales engineer, and you're getting kind of an interesting request from a customer, but I need to have something back to them quickly. A lot of organizations pride themselves on the fact that they can get back to customers fast. That's what they try to do. Time kills sales. The more the time it takes back for you to go back to a customer with what the final pricing is going to be, or the layout's going to be, or just hey, this can actually work, can slow things down quite a bit. Another area is custom product request. Like, I got a standard product, they want to tweak some things. Can I even do this? What is it going to, how is it going to need to change? Are we going to have the material on hand to handle this kind of stuff? These questions come up all the time in a really complex engineering environment. And not only that, even if it's just one-off requests, like you need to go kind of through all three of these major business problems before you get anywhere. So one of the cool things that the data bridge can do with this, you can have document releasing. So you can talk about PDM to ERP connections. Customer quotations, you can get that sent out pretty quickly just by having a CRM or a CPQ and an ERP connection. So bridging those gaps. Like I can have, say, some CRM package, they get a quote, right? Custom sales reach out, it's like, hey, I've got this list of specific options I want to have. They can feed it through a configure price quote system, right? Get that dynamic pricing back, feed it back up into the CRM package, provide that information to the customer. And once they sign off on the quote or they're good to go, push that right down into ERP. You don't have to have somebody managing all the data in between there. You can just process it. The same thing for even engineering validation, right? If you're doing simulation work, making sure that the structure is going to be stable, if you're putting in like warehouse racks, things like that, you can pass a lot of that data back and forth. So on the instance, even like warehouse racking, right? So if you're doing a CPQ, you might be doing the layout, the loading, the different kind of bays you're going to be utilizing, the size of the warehouse, things like that. You could feed that down into a CAD package, which can then, using design automation, which is one of the areas that we're pretty strong in, build out the warehouse, right? You have rules, logic, there's standards that you have internally, pass that through an automation package to build all the wire work for you, and then feed it into, say, like ANSYS or a simulation package and do all the structural analysis to make sure it's not going to collapse. If everything's validated and good to go, feed it back into CAD, and now you can start generating all your documentation. And then even if you want to go further than that and start feeding it into ERP. So you really kind of get into this little like this web of data passing, which without something like this data bridge connector, you wouldn't be able to do. It's all manual email chains, double checking things. You're going to have design review meetings. It's like it's not as fluid of a process, but we can hopefully help a lot of those areas with this package. So I've got a quick little poll question for you guys coming up. Now that I ran through some of those business cases, I'd really like to see kind of how you're planning on using it. So, what kind of applications are you most likely to connect is the first question here. ERP, CRM, PDM, PLM. I think CAD's not an option here, but that might be a good one too. How are you sending and receiving information? Is it primarily email? I know personally, I deal with email, shared files all the time. It always comes up. Product development, you know, are you manually inputting bill of materials into your ERP? Are you going through your bill of materials and changing data in there depending on revision control? And then what phases of your product development require manual entry? So again, like the bill of materials. And you do have any current integration platforms? I mean, I know there's a ton of them out there. What's your experience been like with it? What do you like? What don't you like? If you don't have one, are you looking to have one implemented? So just take a second, look through all these, and then I'll post the results here shortly.
Sorry, I'm still getting a few responses and I don't want to
Okay.
cut anybody off. Looks like we have about half participated, so I'm going to end the poll. And here we go.
All right, so I am seeing a lot of ERP, and this is kind of what I was expecting. Doesn't look like there's too much on the CRM side, so I'd be a little curious about that. And then PDM and PLM is always pretty important, but I was definitely expecting to see the ERP popping up. Again, email and shared files, it's huge. Worked with a lot of places where it's like, hey, I've just got an email structure and a template that we kind of use for fleshing things out. And honestly, sometimes things can kind of get lost in the minutia. Yep, bill of materials, ERP. Yeah, this is all the kind of stuff that I'd be expecting to see. And I'm glad that we're all on the same page with this front because we can definitely help you out there. And I was a little interested to see about, there's not too many integration platforms out there. So that's awesome. Like I said, if you're looking for one, we can absolutely help. If you don't want one, I'd be really curious to kind of see why. So we can always follow up and kind of talk about that. All right, so I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Data Bridge and how we use it internally in here in KETIV. So this is a fairly large undertaking that I was personally involved in over the last few months and took quite a bit of planning to get done. So what we had to do was really handle transactions through an outside CPQ system to KETIV. With the changes in the Autodesk transaction model is one of the requirements that we'd have to be able to transact through their system. So this is a radical change in the way that many of us have interacted with the Autodesk group. But we wanted to make sure it was a seamless transition for our sales team so they could still maintain the processes that they had today while be able to sell in this new model. So in order to do this, we essentially had to be able to process, new quotes, and also renewals. We'd have to be able to capture all of the pricing information that was being fed from that outside CPQ system back into our CRM. And while this is all going on, we needed to have a live connection to see what is going on with the quotes, right? Were they received? Were they paid? We're like, what's going on here? So with all three of these major buckets in mind, we essentially built this process flow. I'm going to talk through it. There's a lot going on here, but I wanted to show this to everybody so you can kind of see the level of complexity you can get going with this data bridge. So at the very start point, we've got HubSpot. That's our CRM utility. We've got, the two buckets here for the data bridge, and this is where we're going to be processing and doing all that logic. And then on the right-hand side is partner web services, which what we're required to connect to in order to process a lot of these quotes. On the top portion here, we talk about renewals. So this is going to be, say, renewing software with a given organization and how we want to pull that data back inside. So what we have to do is essentially trigger a renewal. This is something that the sales team is going to be handling through HubSpot. And what the data bridge does is it collects a bunch of the stuff that comes out of it, say like the customer, the unique identifiers, if there's any kind of the subscriptions that they've got going on. And we use a specific API, right? So we can make this custom connector. Again, this was nothing standard to then call into the outside CPQ system with all of this data to start pulling that information back. Once we've got that information, it's, opportunities, subscriptions, there's like IDs and a bunch of this other information that's coming back from it. We can then massage that data inside of the data bridge to something that's consumable by our CRM package. And that's like deals, line items, and the IDs and the line item IDs. On the flip side of this is when we're doing like new quotes. So there's a whole bunch of actions that you work through, like new coterms, there's a whole list of just stuff that the sales team needs to get done on this. And it's really broken out into either A, we're just trying to get initial pricing, which is a draft, or B, we're finalizing it and that we're ready for the customer to pay. So depending on actions inside of HubSpot, what DataBridge is able to do is discern the difference between those, use those different transaction models, the workflows, and the logic controls that we have built to send the correct information out to process these actions. And then once it's done, we're able to take all of that data back, get the quote number and the pricing details, populate all the line items inside of HubSpot. So then sales can communicate something completely accurately to the customer as far as what the pricing is going to be, what the terms of the engagement are supposed to be, and how they're going to be going through with payment. While all of this is going on down the center is we have a webhook. A lot of different organizations will have webhooks. I mean, Autodesk use webhooks for some of their pieces of software. And really all a webhook is just a little thing that's listening constantly for any changes. So you can either post webhooks, you can get webhooks. And in this instance, we get something from Autodesk, which will then update our quotes continually in a live environment if anything ever changes. So saying it's from a draft state to a finalized state, being able to show that it was invoiced, received, paid, submitted, like whatever happens on any one of these things, we don't have to continually check to make sure it was done. It's just handled automatically through this data bridge and put back into HubSpot. So while all of this is great, it does get impacted by digital maturity. Digital transformation, digital maturity, I think we've been talking about this for years now. But in order to move up in your digital maturity, you need to have interconnected data. I've got a few different levels here, like level 1's manual, fragmented, managed, and optimized. There's some stuff in here that's talking about, manual processes such as like paper, email, Excel. You've got some process automation, maybe some CAD, like things like that. But in each one of these levels, you can find different areas to start utilizing an integration platform like KETIV DataBridge. Even like, so you have maybe level 1, there's stuff inside of level 1 you can automate, but what gets you to level 2 is when you start integrating level 1 to level 2 data, level 2 to level 3 data, and then up to level 4. One of the difficult things about digital maturity and like the transformation matrix is setting up standards. Integrations help you do that because you have to sit down and you have to plot this stuff out. You have to get it down on a whiteboard, meet with a group of people, figure out how we want this information to flow. And just by going through that process, you're really getting yourself set up for that next step. This is what I frequently do a lot of the time with our customer base. Get a bunch of people in the room, talk about what you're trying to get done, where this information is flowing to, and how we want it to move forward. And part of that is a business process assessment. This is honestly one of my favorite things to do with a company. We sit down and we have a real holistic review of the entire organization. So we look at goals, objectives, map out data flows, data threads, workflows, processes, kind of like how everything's moving around, areas like pain points, areas of growth. Like every group has them. I mean, we have them internally here. I know everybody out there has some pain points and things they'd like to improve upon, but even more than that, what's working really well. We'll sit down and we'll meet with all of the departments. It could be sales, engineering, manufacturing, production control, IT, information technology. I mean, we want to sit down with all of these groups to really see how the place runs. At the end of these BPAs, you'll get essentially what's called a results presentation. We'll give you a current and future state analysis. So, what we heard, where you're trying to get to, and in the process of that, we can also give you a gap analysis. So it's like, if hey, you're here, you want to get to this other spot, these are all the steps that you need to do to get there. We work with you on the expected ROI for all of the different steps that you might want to be taking. And then also, I mean, what do these projects kind of look like? We want to start with some low-hanging fruit. Well, this is kind of probably going to cost you the range of X to Z. But at the end of all of this, you really have a roadmap to move forward, and it directly ties into that digital maturity matrix. So I'm noticing I got a few questions popping up here. So I think, Carl, I'll have to reach out to you. I think Sahej hopped on that one. But if anybody's got any questions for me, I mean, this is the perfect opportunity.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kristen.
Yeah.
It looks Carl's asking if Sahej needs his email. I got that sent over to Sahej. So thanks, Carl, for reaching out. Sahej will send you an email. And everybody else, thank you so much for joining. Please join us next week and the week after. And we will see you guys all soon. Thank you again, Kristen.
Oh, yeah, of course.